So it was my introduction to ground fire, and it really is very handy to learn how to jog the airplane around, and became just, every day that, well, as long as they use tracers, I can move the airplane and it would go by, and got kind of cocky about it. Some people say, well, isn't it stressful to be shot at like that? Well, I think because of the training I got in the academy and I learned about this particular job of flying the Ho Chi Minh Trail, that the loss rate was high enough that I probably was going to go back. So I wasn't really betting that I was going to survive this first year, and so it was less stressful. But people who did have a family to go home to, and I'm sure being shot at was much more stressful. And I upgraded to instructor pilot even though I was just a first lieutenant, and I was training captains and majors because I learned the tactics, and I just told them, just try to not worry about it, that, they may get you, but that's the name of the game. And luckily our loss rates weren't that high. Those first couple of shoot downs we had at the beginning of my tour really was pretty much the losses we had in the over the trail group. We also had an airplane just before I arrived where, we talk about one round can get you. Somebody was watching them as they were leaving, and they left the Ho Chi Minh Trail and were heading back to Vietnam. And you just figured, well, we're done for the night. Turned all their lights on and was just driving wings level out of Laos, and they thought they would be on the trail. Well, up came a clip of the aircraft. They saw 4 rounds hit the airplane and this big fireball. And they sent a rescue team to see if they could find any recover any bodies, because they knew exactly where they went down. And the biggest piece they found of the airplane was about the size of a solid plate. I mean, 4 rounds into an airplane that's not very big across is, pretty much took the thing apart. And there's no bodies to be found. If they could probably around in the cockpit, just smithereens. It's sort of like World War I trench warfare with big guns coming in. You don't find people. They're not there. So the other mission we had, which was pretty fantastic, which is now being classified again. It was a classified mission. Was supporting Green Beret teams, because you figure if they have all these North Vietnamese coming through Laos, wouldn't it be nice to be able to find out something about where they're going? So we had this thing where we would put Green Beret teams in. They were a mix of Green Berets and mountain tribesmen that they trained, and they would follow the North Vietnamese down sometimes for weeks. And then there was about to head back in, they would back off and call in the B-52 strike, planned ahead, and they would have 75% casualties. They'd wipe the whole lot up because we gave no notice. Suddenly you're just hiking along on your hike, and the sky opens up, and B-52s could drop a lot of 500-pound bombs, and so it would just level the jungle, and away it would go. And so that was very successful. So the North Vietnamese were taking terrible losses from that, so they really had this anti-Green Beret thing. So the areas where we would put Green Beret teams, they would put special countermeasures in, which took a lot of their people to do that. Unfortunately, towards the end of my first tour, they were coming out of Laos, and they were fighting in the Ashaw Valley, which is a famous valley in South Vietnam. And they were bringing these helicopters in with this team, and I figured, ooh, there's a bunch of people in the north end. We better not go there because we don't want people to know we're coming out of there. There's only a few people in the south end of the field. But they landed. Well, unfortunately, the reason there were a few people at the end of the field, that's where they hid the reporters, so the reporters wouldn't know what's going on. And the reporters said, why are these Americans coming out of Laos in these helicopters? So they blew it to the press, and so no longer were we putting teams in Laos. So we had to just put them in North Vietnam, which really restricted what we could do. But it still was very, very effective. And these Green Berets were just incredibly heroic. And so I enjoyed working with them, and I enjoyed being an instructor pilot. And I tried to stay for another tour. And then there was this classified mission, which even sounded more fun, called Raven. It was to live in Laos and be a spy fighting the Laotians out of the war. Because remember, I'd mentioned at one time that we had an accord that says we weren't going to be in Laos. Well, they undid that, and we were putting people in, as there was tons of North Vietnamese helping the Papat Lao, the communist Laotians, try to overthrow the royal government. And there was some neutralists in there too, so it was really kind of strange war. And so there was this group called Raven, and I volunteered for that. And they said, no, I'm sorry, you have to go back to the States. You're a lieutenant, and we don't like to have lieutenants fighting combat because they tend not to survive. So I ended up getting an assignment to fly EC-121s, which is a flying radar platform. And I still wanted to campaign to get back to be a FAC again. And so I volunteered to go over there, and I was able to, while I was over there, contact some people who were in charge and say, I'd like to get back. They said, well, get a FAC assignment and we'll get you over here. In the meantime, I got to fly a flying radar station and listen to the war go on, so I stayed in touch with the war. And this is a big 4-engine transport, nothing very exciting. Go up and fly around in a big racetrack for 14 hours and then come back and land. And we had a whole radar team in the back, and they directed part of the war because, we were over enemy territory. There's no way that we could have a radar station, but we had a flying radar station, so it was very effective. While I was in that command, I managed to travel with my wing commander to the personnel center for the Air Defense Command, which was we were part of. And I said, how hard would it be to get an O2 FAC assignment? You want one of those? I said, yeah, I did that before, I like it. He said, right here, this sergeant pulled this thing, this whole senior sergeant says, here, write down your name, we have a slot coming up for August. And I said, I'll take it. So they said, okay, you can go in August of 71. So I said, okay, how am I going to game this? So I then contacted the training base in Florida that was going to do my training in August and said, hey, who are you? And it turned out that the cadre that was doing the training down there were guys that were either my students from my first tour or my buddies that were my roommates and party mates. So I said, can you put me through a fast course down there? He said, sure. So I went to my base and I told them I'd like to take some leave, which is vacation time you're allowed to take. So I took leave. I went to Florida and said, push me through, and they put me through a fast course. I moved up my flight to Vietnam. I said I'd been through jungle survival, I won't have to go there. Got to the headquarters in South Vietnam and sent me to Raven, and the Raven guy said, could you get your feet wet a little bit? I said, okay, send me up to Covey. So I went back up to be a Covey FAC again, and here I am, same part of Laos, and these are some roads, give you an idea of the triple canopy jungle that we flew over. And when we're cutting roads to keep the trucks from rolling, this is what hundreds and hundreds of bombs will do to a triple canopy road. Realize this isn't like walking in a meadow. This is 3 levels of jungle that was there on a road cut through it, and the branches weaved over the top so you can't see there was a road there. And we found them, and we bomb it, and we try to find a place where the road was steep, where if you blew it out, they would slide down. And you can just see it's like the craters of the moon. And I have dozens of shots like that, but that's just typical of how some of these roads were. And it was pretty ineffective. We'd ask bombers to come in and cut the road, which is a pretty good feat to come down and drop a 500-pound bomb. Now we have laser bombs that can, you can put it through the driver's window if you want, because we can guide it right to where it goes. But they would have to just be really super pilots and drop the bombs just the right place. And the fact they could cut the road was great. And no sooner were they were leaving, and we watched these guys come out with shovels and start digging, and a bulldozer would come out of nowhere in the jungle. And within a few hours, the road was fixed again. In some cases, and sometimes it took them a little longer. But that's what we're up against. And the same type of thing of trying to hit these targets. Now, in the daytime, it wasn't too bad. We had white phosphorus